Hi, welcome to Malvern Books. Thanks a bunch for coming out tonight. This is really so exciting. I'm so excited about this. This is really going to be a special reading. It's our first kind of co-doing something with an art gallery here in town. It's really something I'd like to do more of. So, let me get going here. Malvern Books is pleased to welcome woodblock print artist, painter, and writer, Kristina Hagman. Besides being an accomplished visual artist whose work is exhibited the world over, Kristina is the daughter of actor Larry Hagman of I Dream of Jeannie and Dallas fame, as well as granddaughter of stage actress Mary Martin, who, if as I always like to point out, if it weren't for Mary Martin, then South Pacific wouldn't have been such a big hit. And South Pacific wouldn't have been a big hit. James Michener wouldn't have made billions of dollars. And there would be no Michener Center at the University of Texas. So, thank you, Mary Martin, from Michener Center. Kristina is also developing a career as a public speaker covering a range of topics related to art, family, and children with learning disabilities. We have teamed up tonight, as I said, with Bone Black Gallery to welcome Kristina to Austin with Veronica. Veronica's here. There will be a reception and an artist talk tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Bone Black Gallery. Please go. It's out on Springdale Road.
Yeah, it's in Canopy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old Blue Genie.
The old Blue Genie on Springdale Road. And we have 4 of Kristina's prints, block prints here tonight that are on exhibit. And there will be all 36 of them tomorrow night. Yeah, of course, it's written down here. 36.
It took a lot of time.
So yes, please go tomorrow night. It will be at 7 p.m. at the gallery. And where the entire suite of intricate woodblock prints, 36 views of Mount Rainier is on display. Tonight, she is here to talk about her debut memoir, The Eternal Party, which we have copies of over there. And if there's not a winner title, I think The Eternal Party is it. So thank you, Kristina, and thank you so much for coming.
Hello, nice to be here. This is my very first official book talk, so I love your feedback, and anything you want to ask at the end will be welcome. I want to thank Malvern Books for sort of expanding their repertoire of what they're representing. It's mostly fiction and poetry, and so this is a memoir. It's a little bit unusual, and I'm glad that they bent their criteria to include me. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Veronica Chechi. She found me on the internet. Power of the internet. Check it out. You put things out into the world, and sometimes magical things happen, like my coming to Austin for the first time in my life. And so I'm very happy to be here. I've been to Texas. I've been coming to visit Texas my whole life. My dad is from Weatherford, Texas. So we almost annually made trips to Weatherford when I was growing up. And I thought I'd get to know the neighborhood a little bit, where I was. So first thing, we landed, checked into the hotel, and I came out here to visit, and I see this wonderful t-shirt over there, and it says, isn't it a different kind of adult bookstore? And I think history is important, and I discovered that this place had once been a different kind of adult bookstore. So I thought I'll just jump right in with the story of how I was in a different kind of apartment as a kid in New York. I lived above a XXX cinema for the first couple of years of my life. And one of the things that people who watch television often will think that, oh, man, if you're on television, you're rich, you've always been rich, everything is just smooth and glassy sailing along, but we lived in different circumstances during my life. Being an actor has its ups and downs. And when my parents moved to New York from London, they needed an expensive place to stay. And so this is, I'm just going to read straight from the book. I lived in an apartment which was right above the Sunluck Chinese gourmet restaurant and the XXX cinema. Occasionally, we ate downstairs at a Chinese restaurant. Pearl, who ran the place, let us eat there on credit. Before moving to America, she had worked in the Chinese circus as an acrobat, and she understood the financial challenges that went with being a performer. On the right, there was a pizza place where ragged-looking children were always hanging around. They wore many layers of clothes, as if everything they owned was on their body at one time and they could run if they had to. Let's see, okay. Dad got a kick out of that apartment. It had previously been a brothel run by a famous madam whose customers still showed up from time to time. But because of this, I was never allowed to go to the front door without being accompanied. So that was my neighborhood. That was pretty interesting. Our neighborhood was particularly gray and dirty in the winter, unlike my grandmother's neighborhood, where there were planters full of pine trees and awnings and jolly doormen with uniforms that had brass buttons on them. Out in the street, in my neighborhood, there were girly posters pasted up and cheap restaurants and liquor stores. In my home, there were lots of preparations and excitement leading up to Easter, not the least of which was buying the perfect Easter outfit to wear in the Easter parade. Now, I don't know if you know about New York, but the Easter parade in New York is pretty darn spectacular, and people to this day dress up and wear great, I mean, people don't wear hats much, but on Easter in New York, they're parading in hats. A few days before the big event, my grandma would pick me up in her chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud, which would pull up to our apartment building right in front of the cinema. One of my parents would walk me down the 5 flights of stairs to the grimy street below, and the chauffeur would open the back seat door. I would hop into the car and enter a different world. Inside, my Granny would be dressed in a chic designer suit with one of her precious little pillbox hats jauntily perched on her head to one side. Around her neck, she wore several layers of pearls interspersed with diamonds, and her shapely legs would be crossed. She sat in the creamy leather upholstery in the back seat, sipping a cocktail. My drink would be sitting there too. Coca-Cola on the mahogany table just in front of me. So there's real contrasts, you know, there was real differences. Neighborhoods change. That neighborhood that I grew up in doesn't exist anymore. We went back about 2 years ago, and all the buildings that had been there when I was a kid are down. While I was there, what's now called the Avenue of the Americas was being built, but while we lived there, all you heard was jackhammers and sewers being built to prepare for that. It was different. A lot of people ask me why I wrote this book. And it stemmed from my last moments with my father. At first, I was just stunned by his loss. Not that he hadn't been close to death many times, but he was a very big person, you know, and as is evident by the many people who followed him all his life. But I was haunted by his last words, and it prompted the investigation that led to this book. We're going to read a little bit more. First page. People don't usually read the first page, but I'm going to start a little bit from the first page. It was the morning after Thanksgiving, and everything had changed. Dad was still in the Dallas hospital room where my brother Preston and I had sat beside him for the last 2 days. But now there was no doubt that he was dying. He had been still and quiet in the middle of the night when I left him in Preston's care while I went back to the hotel to get some sleep. As I had promised my brother I would, I returned just as the sun was coming up over the Dallas skyline. Amazingly, I had been able to sleep for a few hours. I felt ready to face and cope with whatever was going to happen. When I entered my father's room in the intensive care unit, I could see him turning and tossing. I immediately sensed his agitation and fear. He was talking a mile a minute. Words poured out of him fast, as if he had so many things he needed to say while he was still able to say them. He'd been like this for some time, Kristen had said. We exchanged a few words before my brother left, utterly exhausted, hoping to get a bit of rest. I approached the bed and stroked my father's forehead. His words came out jumbled. Though much of what he said was unintelligible, I could easily make out the 2 words he repeated breathlessly over and over again. The words were "forgive me." Why was he saying this? Did he mean those words for me? For my brother who had just left? Was he asking for forgiveness from some higher power? Whatever he meant, those words made me deeply sad. Anyone who has ever sat at the deathbed of a loved one knows the profound sense of sorrow you feel when you know there is nothing that you can do that will make them better. You want to share every precious moment with them, and you long to comfort them in any way possible. But I had a surreal thought. Though I could touch his failing body, I was not sure that he was in that hospital room at all. He was conscious. His consciousness was somewhere else. He was calling out to my mother, "Mai, we have to do this. Maisie, let's go." I wish my mother could have been there. She loved him so much. But by then, she was too far gone with Alzheimer's disease to even be told of his condition. He addressed his own mother. "Sure, Mom. I will, Mom." And then there would be no more words that I couldn't make any sense of. From that point on, the only words that I could make out were, "Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me." A little bit more on this subject, because this is why I wrote the book. After his death, I remained confused and unnerved by why he had begged for forgiveness. What was he thinking of during that last long day? The easy answer was that he wanted to be forgiven for the affairs he had had while married to my mother. Dad's lovers had turned out in force to the celebration and the memorial of his life in Dallas and Los Angeles. According to the new information I was getting from those various sources, just before and after he died, I began to wonder which women were his lovers and which were just his friends or friends of the family, but it didn't matter. All the stories I've heard since Dad died helped me understand what a rich and complicated life he led. The things I could not understand was, why was he asking for forgiveness? If I were to decide he was asking for forgiveness or fooling around, I'd give myself a neat and tidy way of wrapping things up and walk away. But I didn't want to walk away. Throughout my life, I had looked the other way when it came to anything that might take my dad off his pedestal. But now I didn't want a godlike dad. I wanted to understand him. And so I embarked on the search to discover who my dad had been. Just a little bit more. Memory can be slippery. How you remember something can be far more important than what actually happened. As I was embarking on my search to understand what had tormented my father in his last hours, I was interested in finding out as much as I possibly could and getting other people's memories to corroborate my own. In his final hours, it did not help me to understand. Watching glimpses of his life, I sought out many people whose lives Dad had touched, in the hope of understanding why a seemingly happy, contented man who never apologized for anything during his life had begged for forgiveness while he was dying. I Googled him repeatedly. Each time I did, I discovered new things had been posted on him that weren't there the last time I had looked. I found Larry Hagman Memorial, Larry Hagman Marijuana and LSD in Dallas, and Larry Hagman and organ donorship, and Larry Hagman as Tony Nesbitt kissing Jeannie. Oh my gosh, there is something you can find on the internet, Larry Hagman, or I think it's Tony Kisses Jeannie, so passionate. No wonder that show was so popular. I mean, that Jeannie, she just threw herself at him and just covered him in kisses, and he's like, but then he gives it back, and it's like, it's magical. Larry Hagman, registered Peace and Freedom Party, supporting renewable energy. At one point, my search revealed 1,270,000 hits. Various little teeny components on the internet that were out there. So, anybody interested in some Texas stories?
Yeah, absolutely.
Since I'm here? All right, let's see what we've got. I had so much fun knowing that this was going to be the place that I was going to be reading and finding things pertaining to Texas. So, when my dad was born, my grandma had started her serious pursuit to be the best singer-actress imaginable. She really wanted this at a very, very young age, and she had my father at a very young age. He was only 17. Her mother was very happy to take care of my dad, but sadly she died when my dad was only 11. So this boy, who was understandably confused and a little difficult because he felt displaced, went off to boarding school and got kicked out. That is another story. Kind of fun to read. But so when he got kicked out, he didn't want to go back and live with his mother and her husband, her second husband, who they didn't get along real well. So he said, Mom, I want to be a cowboy. Right? So let me move back to see my dad, and I'll be a cowboy. His father's name was Benjamin Jackson Hagman. We all refer to him as Papa Ben. Papa Ben lived up and surpassed any notion my father had of being a manly man. He made up for the years that they had been apart and spent a great deal of time with him. Together they did things like hunting and smoking and drinking. As a little girl, I got to know Papa Ben during our many trips to Weatherford. On hot nights, I would sit curled up, out of the way, listening to jokes and stories told under the cigarette haze that swirled around the bare light bulb while the men played poker and knocked back bourbons on the screened-in back porch. They recounted stories of heroic deeds, of the wild things they did while they were shit-faced, like when Papa Ben drove a tank through a wall of a German bank toward the end of his service in World War II. He decided it was his right to take a bag of cash, and he felt real rich until he learned that the currency wasn't worth the paper it was written on the next day. Let's see, there's one more little bit. Oh, my dad really admired H.L. Hunt. My dad really liked secrets. Secrets made him feel powerful. He admired men who knew how to keep secrets. And he was especially enamored with H.L. Hunt. Dad told me again and again the story that when H.L. Hunt died, the public learned he had more than one secret family and 14 children. So, that's just a little bit. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or read bits that might interest you.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your journey in writing this book, because I know that you had certain challenges in getting words on the page, and I think we're probably never full of creative people who encounter the same sort of things themselves.
Okay, well, Veronica knows me and has read the book, and one of the reasons I became an artist, which works up here, is because the written word was very difficult for me. I have severe dyslexia, and you could see me kind of tripping on some words. But I never in a million years thought I could write a book. So I approached a friend of mine who teaches writing at an art school. And she says, Kristina, I've got some answers for you. I'll meet you on Wednesday, get a really long piece of paper and a bunch of colored pencils. And I live in a little condo, but I do have our family table, which seats 16 at a pinch. So it's a big, long table, it kind of dominates where I live. So I got a big piece of paper, rolled it out, and got my colored pencils. And she said, we're going to start timelines. Each person in your family is going to have a color, and we'll start with the oldest person first, and they'll be at this end, and do your line. And so we drew Grandma Mary, and I had this box of photographs, and we placed photographs all along the timeline of Grandma Mary. And then my mom was the next oldest, so my mom started. We did a different color for my mom with pictures of her that I really loved, and then my dad, and then me, and then my brother. And I had an outline, a visual outline that was like an art project. So that helped me jump in, but severe disabilities are nothing to laugh at. And I was also at taking courses at Santa Monica Community College. And the 4 other times I'd attempted to go to college, they didn't have these resources, but now they have what's called the High-Tech Learning Center for the Disabled. And there were people to help me. There's computer programs. Dragon, Naturally Speaking, I don't know if anybody's heard of that, but it's this amazing program where you can speak into it. It will read text to you. You'll write something, it can read it to you. You can speak into it and it will write for you. I didn't use that for writing the entire book, and I did have Elizabeth Kay to help edit me, but it helped me enough to get stuff on the page so that I could go somewhere from there. And meeting other people at the Disabled Center also made me very grateful for the gifts I do have. And the courage that these people in class had inspired me an awful lot. And kind of, they were all cheering me on. I couldn't not finish this book because I had all my friends in class with me, kind of spurring me on. So, any other questions? Yeah.
So, are you make me interested in that part of the story, writing about your dyslexia, or you have a follow-up? Are you writing something else? I mean, not that you've been through this, difficult process.
I've got a couple ideas. Frankly, this is really, I've been an artist for over 30 years. I know what it is to put on art shows and market art and stuff like that. This book world is a whole, I've always been a book lover. It's a whole new world to me. So before I do the major undertaking of writing another book, I want to see what this ride is like. you know. What does it feel like to ride this book in Bronco?
I wanted to ask, how did your brother feel about the book? Was he as excited and supportive? And
My brother and I don't get along real well. We're 4 years apart, and I'm the eldest, and I'm a girl. When I left at 18, he was 14, and we kind of lived separate lives, you know. A 14-year-old boy and an 18-year-old girl, we're in very different developmental places. And in many ways, we've lived really separate lives, our whole adult lives. And I gave him the book way before it was published, certainly to read, and I asked him for his input, and his only comment was no comment, so.
I was just wondering, in the introduction that I read, it said that you're going to start speaking about.
Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit about that and what you're going to do?
Well, one of the trainers from the Disabled Learning Center is retiring, and she and I are going to go talk about the process of a student coming in, and I like to say especially a student that has come in and tried to graduate 5 times, an older person that wants an opportunity to do it again, yet again, and she's going to talk about, you know, how she assesses me and moves forward. So we're going to be in a mini panel of 2.
That's cool. I like that idea.
Yeah.
What is that? When are you doing that?
We're going to start in Santa Monica at the college first because we're all going to celebrate this. So that's the beginning. We'll see where it goes from there. I'm also going to talk for the Alzheimer's Association. So I wrote a lot about Alzheimer's. My mother's difficult decade with Alzheimer's before she died just 3 weeks ago. So it's still pretty fresh. I write about the wild and crazy decade that I grew up in. The first week the book came out, I was particularly vulnerable because my mom had just died, and the press picked up all on, oh, I took acid with my dad, and you know, Kevin saw a headline that said, JR's daughter takes pot shots at him, and Kevin made me laugh by saying, no, they got it wrong. Larry Hagman's daughter took shots and smoked pot with her dad. And I spoke to somebody in Germany earlier this week, and he said, you took LSD with your dad? And I said, well, I have a feeling back in the 60s and 70s, just about anybody in the entertainment business did that with their kids. It's kind of like, you know, I'm sure they're all talking about it. I haven't read all the books, but there's probably. So let's demystify that one. And, oh, yeah, it's okay. Was there anybody else, any other things? Because I'm really happy to, any questions you might have.
What made you look her up again with that we're all sitting here together?
Well, I run a gallery that's focused on women artists who do works on paper, and I arrive at those artists through many different means. So I was actually looking through the archives of a different gallery in Northern California for a show that didn't happen. I came across Kristina's work and was really taken by it. It references a very famous suite of prints, 36 Views of Mount Fuji. And I liked the idea of a contemporary female artist appropriating this idea by a historical male artist who did not print his own work. He had a team, printed most of your own work, and carved your own blocks, and just kind of flipping that on its head, in addition to the fact that it was beautiful, and reached out, and there we go. So for me, it was the work, how I arrived at it, which I think is the proper way, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. You know, I'm always really happy when I'm not introduced with my pedigree like a poodle. Oh, and you're going to have dinner with Kristina. She's Larry Hagman's daughter. And by the way, she's also Mary Martin's granddaughter. And when people find me without that preface, it's always really exciting for me. And to explain a little bit more about the work, I lived in Seattle for 14 years. And on a clear day, you can see the mountain, which isn't very frequently. So it becomes this mythic thing that you look forward to or look forward to seeing whenever possible. And a friend of mine was working at the, there's a gallery for the journalists in Tokyo. They have an art gallery at their club, the International Journalist Club. And she said, Kristina, why don't you do a show, kind of an East meets West kind of thing? I'm running this gallery right now. And I said, yeah, Hokusai. Hokusai was a great printmaker. People know him because of the Great Wave of Kanazawa. It's an image that I've been told is as popular as the Mona Lisa. The big wave, and you see the mountain way in the distance, and these boats that look like they're just about to crash. And I said, I can do 36 views of Mount Rainier, just like 36 views of Mount Fuji. Great idea. It took me 4 years to make it. By then, she'd moved to Switzerland. Yeah, it's what you might call the slow art movement. Hokusai, as you said, had somebody who prepared the paper, somebody who carved the blocks, somebody who inked them up, etc., etc. Now, I will tell you, it was a grand undertaking, and I didn't do it alone. I had a master printmaker. Veronica's also a master printmaker, so she knows about this, but who helped me. I always had messy hands. I carved all my plates. I came up with all the designs for them, but I was always covered in ink. And my master printer was pristine and perfect and helped me register them all and keep track of them all. There's a YouTube about how I make these prints. It is Printing with a Vandercook by Kristina Hagman. And so you can see the process there because it's way too hard to describe.
But you'll also be speaking
But
about
I
this
will
tomorrow.
be speaking. I have blocks.
At the art gallery / print shop, so
You get to see kind of the down and dirty way it's done tomorrow, which is kind of fun.
And they will be on the sale.
And they are on sale. If you like any of these, they'll get a hold of Veronica. And if you like these, or even kind of like these, there's 32 more in another location. All right. Well, anything else?
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.